Hey, welcome to Whitefields Community Church Sermon Extra. We're currently in a series called The Trouble Is, in which we're looking at the issues that cause the biggest hurdles in embracing Christianity and embracing Jesus. And we're looking at those. We're just tackling some of those issues, asking some tough questions, and we really want to deal honestly with the things that you and other people are struggling with when it comes to faith and the claims of the Bible. And so this past Sunday, we talked about the issue of science, which ranked very high in our poll and in other polls as a reason why people say that they have trouble embracing Christianity. And so to go a little deeper on this subject, we only had 40 minutes on a Sunday morning. And furthermore, I'm not completely an expert on this. I wanted to get in here somebody who knows more than I do on the subject and who could speak with some authority. So right here we have Chris Dayton. Chris is an elder at Whitefields and a very smart person. So Chris, maybe you could tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and maybe tell us some things about science.
Sure. Sitting in on Sunday listening to your sermon, it reminded me of when I went to CU as a grad student. Mm-hmm. And there I studied various aspects of DNA and how they promoted the formation of RNA, which then made proteins. So I got to thinking, back then at that time, I was wholeheartedly immersed in the idea that natural selection and evolution was perfectly normal.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was. It's how we got our grants. You had to play the game.
Okay.
And so every aspect that we would propose had to have some sort of a tie-in to that. So we were studying viruses and their DNA replication and the rates of replication. And anyway, in the back of my mind the whole time was, oh man, these cells that we're working with are incredibly complicated, because every time we started to learn how to do one thing, it just raised new questions like, how did that happen? So what I was going to do is use a scientific method then and walk you through what I walked through to come away from evolution as being sort of the basis of my knowledge of how things started. So the scientific method is basically recognition of a problem, then formulating it. And in my case, the problem was, is evolution real? Is creation real? Or is there a hybrid between the two? Second is a collection of data, and that would be observations, experimentation. You get test results. And in my case, I'm going to be applying some probability to the formation of the proteins that I was studying. A little background with respect to proteins, they're made up of amino acids. Think of 20 different types of amino acids, which are what we have in the human body. And from these 20 amino acids, we make many, many thousands of proteins in our body, over 2,000 enzymes, which are proteins. You can think of the amino acids linking together like boxcars on a train, except each one's different. You have a tanker, you have a boxcar, you have a hopper, a gondola. Each one has its own name. In addition, each amino acid has a left hand and a right hand. Actually, they're kind of mirror images of the two. The body, biologically speaking, we only use the left-handed versions. So if I had a primordial soup and it had all the proteins in it, left and right, because they're both formed indiscriminately according to Darwin, what would be the odds of putting down the first amino acid, the first train car, if you will, in the right orientation, so it's a left instead of a right? Well, it's like flipping a coin. It's 1 and 2. So if I wanted to build on that, and I build, say, 100 amino acid long protein, the next one would also have to be a left. So that's 1 and 2 times 1 and 2. So you can see the natural progression is that we're multiplying 1 times 2, 1 over 2 times 1 over 2 on up to 100 times. That gives you a huge number. Beyond my comprehension is 10 to the 30th power that you're going to naturally do that by chance. And that's a relatively small protein. In the human body, proteins range from 44 to 30,000 amino acids long. So 100 is on the low end of it, and still it's 1 in 10 to the 30th power that it's going to be formed. Okay, now this thing, if we built it, is it going to do anything? Well, if it's going to do anything, it has to be in the right sequence, and there's 20 amino acids. So to put the right amino acid in the first place is 1 in 20, because there's 20 amino acids to choose from. Discounting the fact it has to be a left also, just looking at that it has to be one of the 20. And now when we do the same type of progression, 1 over 20 times 1 over 20 times 1 over 20, all the way up to 100 to get this one amino acid that's 100 amino acids long, our odds are 1 in 10 to the 130th power. So that's a 1 with 130 zeros after it. So these are numbers that are just beyond comprehension. So I can give you a couple of measuring sticks. One of them would be, if you had a coin collection of silver dollars and say it was 10 to the 21st power of coins, which is 1 with 21 zeros after it, how many silver dollars would you have? Well, assuming they could float on the ocean, it would cover the whole Earth 120 feet deep. So that's what 10 to the 21 is. So that's okay, it just tells you there's a big number, but what does it speak to chance? Nothing. But there was a French mathematician named Emile Borel, and I apologize to his family if I'm mispronouncing his last name. Anyway, he said that the upper bound for numerical probability that you could ascribe to chance would be 1 with 50 zeros after it, 10 to the 50 power. So anything beyond that can't happen by chance. What did we say? That making an amino acid, a simple one, just trying to get the things in the right order, that's 10 to the 130th. Many orders of magnitude higher than chance. So with those two measuring sticks, you can see that even creating a simple amino acid is just not going to happen, let alone the larger ones up to 30,000 amino acids long. There's another aspect to
Yeah. No, go please.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's another aspect to this too. Evolutionists would say, we wave our magic wand and say, in 4.6 billion years or 6 billion years, with the right primordial soup, you can get it to work. It's going to happen. But that also falls flat. And I would point you to answersingenesis.org if you want to see another numerical analysis of that. I won't bore you with a lot more numbers, but I'll just tell you that numerically speaking, it's not going to happen in 4 billion years, 6 billion years. We're talking many, many orders of magnitude higher than that for any tiny little chance molecule to be formed. So it's kind of falling flat. This goo to you via the zoo type approach of natural selection and evolution, it doesn't work. So there is one thing that's missing in this whole conversation, and that is DNA. RNA produces RNA. RNA orders the amino acids. Where did that come from? And who ordered it in the first place to get a protein that would work in harmony with all these other things? Another thing is that in the scientific method, things have to be reproducible. If you can say it, then prove it. And it has to be reproducible not only by Darwin, but other people. And so far, nobody has seen any lateral evolution occur. Vertical evolution. I'm all in favor of lateral. I don't know about you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was watching something recently with John Lennox that I mentioned on Sunday, and John Lennox said, I agree that what Darwin observed was correct, that he saw a variation in the species. Now, as to how you interpret that and what that means, that's another question.
Exactly. You have various kinds of bird bills, which is what Darwin observed. And they evolved in a natural fashion because of the type of food that was available in the Galapagos Islands. You have various kind of dogs, plants, but they're all in their own kind. You don't have a dog and a horse making a new kind, or a falcon in a person making a new kind.
So, Chris, are there any other alternative explanations for evolution?
Yes. One, the Christian would say creation, because God said so. We can investigate that real quickly. Another is sort of a position I went to after I looked at evolution, and straight up evolution didn't work for me. I thought, what about a primordial soup? If God put everything together in just the right concentrations and then just let things kind of percolate and build, how does that look? And I kind of went there and I thought, God's powerful. He knows what's going to happen, so maybe that's possible. So looking at that, it doesn't hold water either. Some of the problems with it are in when you line it up with, if you use Genesis as a milestone, because I had to use Genesis because I believe in God. And I was trying to marry the two and merging it, and I'm not alone in this. There's other people that believe it too. Yeah. In evolution, you would have to have the sun before the earth, and it doesn't work that way in Genesis. You got the earth before the sun. reptiles and birds. The natural progression in evolution is reptiles and birds. But that's not what Genesis says. You got birds first. The big thing is that evolution requires a lot of natural selection culling by death. So if you don't have what it takes, you're out, and your traits don't get moved on. But what we see in Genesis is that sin didn't enter the world until Adam sinned, Eve sinned, and that's when death entered the world. But you had a fully formed person at that point, and he had named all the animals. So death hadn't entered into the equation. There's many other different things like that. So this hybrid approach that I had embraced fell apart rather quickly, and it left me looking at the Bible. And when you look at the manuscript, the archaeological, the prophetic, the scriptural harmony, and then just reading through it, it all made perfect sense. The problem with the Big Bang is that it says you had nothing, then something, and then it exploded. Where did the nothing come from? To make the something? Well, the gospel tells us. If you put your trust in the Bible, like I have now, Colossians 1:16 talks about God created everything. Genesis, the very first sentence is He created it. So it must be important to God if He said it the very first sentence in the Bible. And also one of my favorites is Proverbs 20:12. The ear that hears, the eye that sees. God made them both. It's not evolution. I don't see how it could be evolution based on all that. So when I look at the pile of facts, I have to come down on the side of intelligent design. And being a Christian and having read the Bible, I believe that what the Bible says happened is the accurate account of creation. So it's not necessarily a problem with head knowledge. We have all the facts. I think it's a heart issue. And until you let the Spirit in to work on you, then you're going to have trouble wrestling with these facts.
Yeah. One other thing that another science-oriented person at Whitefields told me after the sermon is that there's a difference between what you might call natural sciences, things which are sciences like physics, chemistry, biology, which are studying things that we can study here and now, and what you would call historical sciences. So these would be like anthropology and others that deal with the origin of the universe or the origin of species and things like that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and I purposely stayed away from it because it's another large topic. It would take another 20 minutes to talk about, but some of the aspects where they also coincide is you can look at the second law of thermodynamics, which says in very basic words, everything tends to a maximum disorder. And you can produce equations that say that this chemical reaction is going to go this way based largely on enthalpy and entropy, and of the two, entropy usually dominates. So if things tend to a maximum disorder, even if you produce a widget here in this system, you have to have greater disorder created somewhere else in order for that to happen. So how does that relate to what you're talking about? It doesn't support it at all. Entropy, maximum disorder. What happens when you put a car in a field and just let it sit there?
You get two cars.
That's right.
No, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, and neither have we excavated a car.
Oh, yeah,
even though all the natural, everything that you need to make it, rubber and iron, is in the ground. So things tend to a maximum disorder. So that's one aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah, and specifically what this person was saying was that especially in those sciences, they're using a method, which is a scientific method. It's a different method than like one which deals with repeatable data, and that in those cases particularly, there's a high level of subjectivity involved. So I thought that was interesting.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chris, for being here and sharing with us some of your story and your insights, and we appreciate it. Check out in the notes below. You'll see a link to the sermon. You'll see a link to other stuff that could be helpful for you. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a comment, and we would love to hear from you and respond to you. God bless. Bye-bye.